Hello and welcome to another video. In this video, we are going to create a dropdown using React and Tailwind CSS. So let's get started. As you can see, I have an Next.js project set up here. I have this page.tsx file which exports a React functional component. As you can see, I'm returning a div here that you are seeing on the right hand side, this indigo colored window. Here to the div, I have given height of screen, that is the viewport height, and width of full, and a background of color indigo. So here I'm going to render a drop-down component that I'm going to create from scratch. So this is going to be a custom drop-down component that I'll create from scratch using Tailwind CSS and React. So inside this components folder, I'm going to create a file. Let's name it dropdown.tsx. I'm going to use React functional export component snippets RFCE. Press enter. Here I'm exporting React functional component. I can so let's go back to this page file, page.tsx file. Inside this, I'm going to render the dropdown component. Dropdown. As you can see, VS Code is giving me suggestions to import from where to import the dropdown component. So the dropdown component that I just created is located in this directory, root folder components /dropdown. So I'll press enter. I think I have misspelled the dropdown folder. Let's rename it dropdown, missing the n here. Okay, let's update it here as well. So as you can see, the import has been updated. It's importing from the dropdown.tsx file now. Let's import dropdown and here as well. Let me save this. Okay, as you can see, the dropdown text has appeared on the right hand side in this window. So let me center this so that we'll have a clear view of what we're going to create. So I'm going to center it with flex. I'm going to give it item center, justify center. As you can see, the drop down text is centered now. So we're going to work in this drop down component. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to render a button here for the drop down. So how a drop down works is, we have a button like thing. As you have seen, let me show you the drop down that HTML gives us by default. Sorry, that is select. It takes a number of options. Let me show you one. Option 1. Let me save this. As you can see, the select drop down has appeared here. So this drop down, it looks like a button with a chevron, and that indicates that this is a drop down. So when you click on it, a small window opens or a modal opens below it, listing all the options that are in the drop down. So we're going to create a custom component that will have the same functionality, because the select component, styling the select component in HTML CSS it's not easy. It's kind of twisted. You cannot use CSS or Tailwind styles to you actually don't have 100% control over the default HTML elements. A few of them, like one of them is select. So for that, I'll create a custom drop down with all the functionalities that the select button has. So let's do it. So I'm going to render a button here, button. I'm going to give it a name of select. As you can see, the select text has appeared here. So I'm going to style this button a little. Class name, I'm going to give it a padding of y of 3, a padding x of 6, a border, and a border radius that is rounded, let's say medium. Let me save this. As you can see, the button has appeared. So let me give it a minimum width. Let's make it a bit wider. I'm going to give it a minimum width of let's say 200 pixel. Now the button is white, and also inside the button I'm going to render this text inside a span. You'll see why in a bit. And below the span, I'm going to render an icon. That's the chevron icon. So I'm going to chevro. I'm going to import the chevron down icon from Lucid React. That's a React library that gives SVG icons that we can use in our React components. You can install this library by using npm install Lucid React. It's spelled like LUCIDE ECT, Lucid React. So let me import this chevron down. VS Code is smart enough to give me the suggestions, so I'll press enter. Let me save this so you can see, and the chevron down icon has appeared here. So by default, the HTML containers have the flex direction of column. So let me make this a flex container and give it a flex direction of row. So let me make this button a flex container. So I'll say flex item center justify between. So I want the select text aligned towards the left and the chevron icon towards the right. So it aligns the elements towards the edges. Let me save this. As you can see, the text and the icon are aligned. Line. Let me give the color to the text. Let me make the text white inside the button. Let me save this text white. So as you can see, the button is looking nice now. So to create a drop down, I'll create a div. I'll create a container here in which I'll render all of the options that you want to render inside the drop down. So the button, I'll create a div. Let me create a div here. I'll give it a class name of bg white, padding y of 3, padding x of 2. Let me save this. As you can see, a small container has appeared here with a background color. Let me also give it a radius rounded medium. Now it has a border radius of 6 pixels. So what we can do, we can hard code the options here. Actually, let's make this div as an unordered list, and that will make sense, more sense semantically. Unordered list. This is an unordered list. Inside this, I'll render list items. So I'll render, let's say, 4 list items. I'll press Alt and select multiple locations where I'll want to write something. So option, this much text is common, so I'll give it all of them class names. So let me give padding y of 2, border B, border bottom. Let me save this. You can see the options are rendered here. And to the unordered list, I want to give it a margin so that it does not stick with the button, and there's a space between the button and the drop down. So I'll give it a margin top of 2 and save it. As you can see, now there is a space of 8 pixels between the bottom and button and the div. So let me name this option 1. This is option 2. This is option 3, and this is option 4. So what I want to do now is when I click on this button, I want the model to disappear, and if I click again, I want the model to appear, or the drop down to appear. So to achieve this functionality, I have to create a state. If that state is true, the drop down will appear, and if the state is false, the drop down would disappear from the DOM. So let me create that state. I'm going to create a state using useState hook const show dropdown and a setter function set show dropdown. Use state hook. VS Code is giving me suggestions that I need to import the use state hooks, so I've imported. As you can see, it has added the use state import here above. So by default, I'm going to set the state to false. So false. I'm using here the error you're seeing is because I'm using Next.js. So by default, the components inside Next.js are server components. So here I'm using use state hook, and in order to use hooks, we need to use client components. So to make this, this is a server component by default. So to make this a client component, we need to add this use client directory on top of the component that we want to make as a client component. So as you can see, the error has now disappeared. So now let me create the state. I have created a state. So I want to, this is the modal. So let me, if I do Control X and save this, the modal has disappeared. So I want to achieve the same thing using the state. So let me paste it again. So I'm going to wrap this in the curved braces. I'm going to render this conditionally. So I have the state show dropdown. So I'll say show dropdown. I'll use the conditional operator here and double and sign. It'll check if the show dropdown variable is truthy. It'll show the dropdown, and if it's false, it will hide the dropdown. So if I save, by default the value of the show dropdown variable is false, so the dropdown has disappeared from the DOM. So if I manually let's say set it to true, you can see the dropdown has reappeared again. So in order to do this, achieve this, I have to link it to the button click. So let me do that. Let me set it back to false. Now you can see the dropdown has disappeared. So I want to achieve this functionality on the button click. So I'll add an on click listener to the button, connect it to a function. Let's say handle click. So I'll create this function above. This is going to be an arrow function, const handle click is equal to arrow, and on clicking I'm going to set show dropdown. So I want to toggle the dropdown on the button click. So whatever is in the state, if the show dropdown state is false, when I click on it, it should reverse the state. It should set it to true. So I'll negate whatever is in the show dropdown state. So if the show dropdown is true, it will set it to false. This negation, this is called negation or not operator. This will reverse whatever is in the show dropdown variable. So if it's true, it will set it to false, and if it's false, it will set it to true. So in short, it will toggle the state. So if I click on the button now, you can see dropdown is appearing and disappearing upon clicking the button. But if you can see, as I click on the button, there is a content shift. The button is shifted upwards when the dropdown is shown, and if I click on it, it's shifted downwards. The content is shifting, the layout is shifting. So I need to handle this to prevent the content shift. I'll give this dropdown a position of absolute, and I'm going to give this main container in which the button and this is the container. Let me give this a border. As you can see, this container, let me give it a border of red so that you can see it properly. Border red 500. So what I'm going to do, the drop down is inside this container as well. It's hidden. You are not able to see it. If I click on the button, it'll appear. But as I have, if I hide this absolute, if I erase this absolute position, let me show. So if I click on the button, you can see the drop down appears inside this container, and this the width of this container gets bigger. That's why the content shift is taking place. So what I want to do is I want this container to be of the same size, but I want to take this drop down out of the HTML flow. I want to make it position absolute and place it relative to this container with the red border. So let me do that. Let me erase this border red and this border as well. Let me give this position of relative. Let me save it. Let me give this a position of absolute, as you can see. Now if I click on the button, the drop down is toggling, but there is no content shift. So we have achieved what we were looking for, but now the problem is the width of this container has shrinked. So what I'll do, I'll set the left position to 0 and a right position to 0, so that the container is relative to this, and it will stretch up to left of 0 and right of 0. So as you can see, if I click on the button, the drop down is toggling fine. But now the other functionality that I want in this, when I click on the option, the drop down should close, and the selected option the option that I select should get selected here. It should appear here as the button text. So for that we need to create another state. So to create that state, we need to call the use state hook again. So const selected option, let me give this a name of selected option set selected use state. So by default I'm going to give it a name of select, as if no option is selected, I want to button to read select. So the string select, sorry. So if I save this, you can see select. If you want to confirm this, if it's showing this select, you can add dots here and save it. No, okay, sorry, I need to change the select here to the value in which I'm setting the selected option. So you can see the dots. Let me erase the dots now. If I save, you can see the dots are. So I'm rendering, I'm hard coding these options. What if I'm getting the options from the backend or something as a list, and I want to render all of the options, whatever the number may be, I want to render them, and whenever I click on one of the options, the option should get selected and the drop down should close. So in order to do that, let me create an array. I've already created one, so let me paste that. So I've created an array, options array, which contains a list of options. So I'm going to map over these options and render each option here. So instead of hard coding 4 items, let me render only 1 item dynamically. So let me show how to do that. I'm going to map over the options array. Let's options array dot map. It will take a callback function, and I'll for each item in the array, I'll render a list item. So this callback function will take the current item and the index of that item. So the index is a number and item is the option, that is the string. So here I want to render the item, and I'm going to give this a key of index. So if you can see, I have 5 options here now, and also add options to it. Let's say option 6. If I save, you can see the 6th option. You can add more options, and if you are getting options from somewhere, you can render them like this option. So on the list item, I'm going to add on click listener, and I'll create a function for this. Handle option select, const handle option select. It's going to be an arrow function as well. So it will take a parameter, that's the option of type string. So whenever I click on the list item, I want to call this function handle option select, and I'll call it with a param of the item. If I click on, let's say, let me save this, let me show it again. So if I click on this option, this is my current item. The map function has rendered these, and this is the item. If I click on this, it'll call this handle option select with the item that I'm currently clicking on. So this function will take this option, and inside this handle option, we are going to set selected option to item that we're getting from the click, and finally, when the option is selected, we will set show drop down. We'll close the drop down to false. This is not item, this is option, and this is false. Okay, let me save this now. So if the toggle is working fine, so if I click on the option, you can see the option 3 has been selected, option 5 is selected, option 6 is selected, and so on. If I refresh the page, you can see the default value select is being shown. So the one thing that's left, when we hover over these options, we need to set the cursor to pointer. So I'm going to do cursor on this list item, that is the option. I'm going to set cursor CURSO cursor to pointer. So if I hover over these options, you can see the cursor has changed to the pointer. So that's it. That's the drop down, custom drop down. You can customize it however you want. Now you can change the border colors, change the text sizes, change the padding. And one thing I'll add to this is, when the drop down is visible, I want to change this chevron down icon to chevron up. I'll change the direction of this icon. So to do that, in this chevron down icon, I'll add a class name. The class name is going to be a template string, so that I'll add styles conditionally to it. So I'm going to add a $sign and curly braces. So I'm going to say, if drop down is visible, then add property of rotate, then rotate the icon to 180. If I save it, and if I click on the drop down, you can see the chevron has rotated by 180 degree, and now it looks like I'm rendering the chevron up icon, but actually I'm not. I'm just rotating its position. So that's it. Hope you like the video. Thank you.